Welcome back to the Better Men, Better Ball Player podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cobb. I want to thank you for joining us here on our 96th episode of the podcast. We get a chance to talk to Jon Fitzpatrick. Jon Fitzpatrick is the current assistant athletic director and head baseball coach at Indianola High School in Indianola, Iowa. He's starting his second season. Before he got to the program, they were below 500, and since then, they were 30-11 last year. Looking to, again, build on the culture that he's setting there at Indianola. Before Indianola, he was the head coach at Martensdale St. Mary's, and it is a public school. It's something we joked about and talked about. But for people that, you might have heard that Martensdale St. Mary's, they were really known for the national record at the time for winning 88 straight games. He was assistant coach at that time. He spent 12 years at Martensdale, 10 years as the head coach, 2 years as an assistant to Justin Dehmer when they won the 88-game winning streak. Pretty special. And of the 10 years that he was the head coach, he spent 9 out of the 10 years at the state championship. They were state finalists 9 out of the 10 times in Iowa. He is also a mental performance coach where he works with college teams. He works with multiple high school teams in multiple sports. He provides one-on-one coaching with athletes. He's the author of Don't Shoot the Young Buck, Living in the Present Moment. He continues to do that, so you can check him out at coachJohnFitzpatrick.com. Sorry, www.coachfitzpatrick.com. And you can learn more about him here. But today we get a chance to talk about how he is building the culture at Indianola, talking about post-game reports, talking about a lot of mental game stuff, and how he's incorporating the mental game into practice, right? A lot of guys even say, how do I practice self-control? How do I practice, being in control of myself? How do I practice the mental game? And so he gets a lot of tangible things, talked about the language that he speaks, how things you can do during practice, and really just a daily practice that he's involved with the mental game. So want to get a chance to talk to him. It was a great chance. Got a chance to meet him at the ABCA this year, along with our guys at Netting Pros. Again, I just want to thank those guys. Netting professionals are improving programs one facility at a time. Netting professionals specialize in the design, fabrication, installation of custom netting for backstops, batting cages, dugouts, scoreboards, BP screens, and ball carts. They also design and install digital wall padding, windscreen, turf protectors, dugout benches, dugout cubbies, and more. Netting professionals continue to provide quality products and services to many recreation, high school, and college fields, facilities, and stadiums throughout the country. Contact them today at 844-620-2707 or info@nettingpros.com. Visit them online at www.nettingpros.com or check out Netting Pros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for all those latest products and projects. So again, it was great seeing Will Miner, all those guys at Netting Pros at the ABCA, and fortunate to meet Coach Fitzpatrick at the ABCA, and that's just one of the great things about the ABCA, the networking part of it. Getting to meet guys who are just as passionate as you are and getting to learn from them. So looking forward to it. I know you guys will as well. Here he is, Coach Jon Fitzpatrick from Indianola High School.
So I first started coaching right out of college. I was actually still in college. So in Iowa, our actual high school season is during the summer. And so I was still playing my junior year in college. And, what am I going to do in the summer? And I see that there's an opening at a small 1A school called Martensdale St. Mary's. And I apply because it's like 10 minutes from where I'm going to college. And I get an interview, ended up getting the job, and I know absolutely nothing about the school, right? It's like 3 hours away from where I went to high school. They were, like 19 and 12 the year before. And just like, okay, I'm excited. I'm excited to get ready. The first time I get the call, get the interview, and the head coach, a guy by the name of Justin Dehmer, like, hey, do you want to come over on the weekend? You don't have games, and we'll just kind of talk about practice plans and et cetera. Sure, I'll go over to your house, and he starts going over, practice plans. He starts diving into the mental game, and my mind was completely blown because I had never heard of it, right? I am now a junior in college, played in high school, 3 years in college at this point, had never heard any of the mental game stuff. And I mean, I am just like swimming in the information he's given me in 2 hours about the charts that they're keeping and how they go through routines and et cetera. And, he keeps bringing up a guy by the name of Cain. And this is like 2009 at this time. Obviously, I'd never heard of Cain, but my interest is immediately sparked. And, so I start trying to find any book, any article Cain has online, and I am just all in, and I'm trying to absorb all of this. So, over the next 2 years, I am able to coach with Justin Dehmer, and we have some crazy success. Go undefeated, win a state title, end up being a part of an 88 game win streak, which was a national record at the time. And I mean, obviously we had really, really nice players. But the mental game is definitely a separator, right? When the closer you get to that state championship, the more the teams are equal. And that mental game and being cool under pressure definitely helped in some of those situations. So I had a couple of years to be able to coach with Justin, and he ultimately ended up creating One Pitch Warrior, and it was pretty cool because I would go with him when he was first starting, going to different clinics. Like I would travel with him and listen to him speak and just know the impact that I felt, a couple of years previous to that. He was making that same impact on other coaches. And sometimes maybe they had heard a little bit about the mental game, but he was really able to deliver it in a manner of here's how you can actually implement the mental game, and just continue to get better. So when I became a head coach myself, I took all of it, right, and then just continued to dive into Cain's work and really get better. So over those next 2009 to 2015, 16. I was able to hear Brian speak live a couple more times. And if you've ever listened to him live, it's pretty awesome, right? I mean, he absolutely brings the energy. And you just get so much out of it. So it was like 2017. I went to a total immersion experience down at Cain, Cain's place in Phoenix. And I mean, that is just something completely, I'm going to say life-changing. Just to be able to spend that much time, with him and learn directly from him, ask him any questions. There was nothing that was off the table, and be able to bring that back, kind of mold it into something not only for my program, not only for my my work as now an assistant athletic director, so I can help other programs, but ultimately turn this into Fitzpatrick mental performance to help others, right? Just knowing the impact that it had on myself as a coach, as it's had on others. So then actually right before, obviously COVID was a thing before it kind of became nationally, but like right before COVID, I went down and spent another, 4 or 5 days with Cain. And it just kind of re-solidified all of the mental performance work that I was doing, and another to be able to learn from him. So, I guess kind of answer your question. I mean, 2009 was really the first time I had heard of Cain. So over the last 13 years, just continuing to try to dive into his work, and kind of seeing the way that he's molded it and gotten better, and definitely has helped me as well.
You mentioned about Justin Dehmer and the talking about practice plans, right? And then how you dive into that within the mental game as you talk about the practice plans. So, because I think that's what a lot of guys say, like, how can we incorporate that? So, like, how are you incorporating that into your practice plan?
Yeah, that's definitely molded over the years as well. So what I currently do now is we will do we do not actually get into a classroom, right? It is nice out, so we will do I call it a mental minute. Usually it takes about 5 minutes, but we have a topic that we're going to talk about before practice, and it could be something that was affected over the last week, or I do have some like scripted things out, stories that could connect. I mean, anything you possibly think of to get those kids thinking about it. And the best thing about those mental minutes is kind of go back to this idea of awareness, strategy, and action, right? Kids, coaches, adults, a lot of times they're just not aware of the situation, right? They're not aware of their poor body language when they strike out. They're not aware of how they respond to adversity. But let's get them to be aware of themselves, then provide them some strategies, which would be like the routines, right? Routines that we're going to be able to place within a game. And then ultimately help them put it into action, and then hopefully we can get those in game. So we'll kind of do that before practice, and then we build in routines within practice. Whether that's how to walk up to the plate with big body language. Maybe we're practicing green lights, yellow lights when we're hitting, right? So we'll take swings and you're in a green light regardless of the outcome of your swing. Things are really good. Third swing, you need to practice your yellow light routine, right? So you'll step out, you'll do something physical, you'll take that deep breath, and then we'll get back into the box, right? And then the fourth swing, your round is done, and then we're gonna walk off the batter's box with like big body language. We'll actually practice striking out, right? So what to do other than slamming your helmet or swearing or throwing the bat, like whatever. I mean, things that you do see other teams do, right? But let's practice those things. Let's make them be aware of what we need to do when we get back into the dugout, and what does that look like. So building some of that adversity within practice, get them ready for games. And then at the end of practice, we'll journal and we'll talk. We'll either do a well, better, how for themselves. Sometimes maybe we'll just talk about it as a team, or a start, stop, continue. And just get them to reflect upon, the practice, themselves, the team, and what's something that we can do to get better. And a lot of time those conversations, spark something that can get us better as coaches as well.
Because I remember Brian bringing that out here at the ABCA was the well, better, how. And you said, I'll do that, or the start, stop, continue. What do you like the difference between the two of them? Like when will you choose to do well, better, how, and not start, stop, continue, or vice versa?
Yeah, I like well, better, how, like on a weekly setting. So this would be like a Sunday night. People typically are kind of have Sunday nights for themselves, right? Typically not a ton going on. So kind of reflecting upon the week. What did I do well over this last week? What could I do better? How am I going to do that better? That piece of how am I going to do it better can help kickstart your next 168 hours, right? Can help kickstart that next week. And then really being able to incorporate that how over the next week, right? So if we're thinking about this in baseball sense for our kids, and what's something I'm doing well, I'm hitting fastballs into gaps, whatever, right? What do I need to do better? Well, I need to be able to sit back on a curveball and hit it into the right center field gap. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to take X amount of swings off the hack attack, daily. Okay, well, there's my how. So now let's incorporate that every single day, right? So then at the end of every day, did I do it? Yes or no, right? It's pretty simple. So they can kind of take a little bit of ownership in their own work as well. I like that start, stop, continue. I like it post game because it's just something quick, right? And it's a good discussion. What's something that we need to start doing to get us closer to make sure we're playing our best at the end of the season when it matters the most? And, an example, what do we need to start doing? We need to start reading dirt balls better, right? What do we need to stop doing? We need to stop taking fastballs down the middle. I'm making stuff up, right? And what do we need to continue doing? We need to continue being really aggressive on the bases, something on those lines. And a lot of times just being able to pose that question to kids and just kind of see if is what they're thinking, does that align with what I'm thinking? And if it does on any three of those, great, okay, that makes sense. We're good. And if it differs, then we have a couple of things to work on in a couple of different areas that we could improve on. So, those are, once again, really good conversation starters.
That's great. I even think it's good to just even have just a process for like even after like post game. Again, there's always people that are saying, do you have a post game speech or not? But at least this is a simple little process. Everybody kind of knows what they need to. Yeah, we're going to state the obvious, and then what we can see again, like you said, I think you hit it. It was nice you said that. Are the kids in alignment with what we feel like we didn't do well?
For sure. Yep. And a lot of times, I know we'll play some teams and they're talking down the line for like 25, 30 minutes. And I just don't. And not to say it's right or wrong, but, post game, kids know how they played. They know how we played. That's not time for me to get on a soapbox or anything, right? So this allows something smaller. And then if I do talk, post game, if I'm going to bring anything up, it's going to be talking about our ape, right? Our attitude, our perspective, and our energy and effort. And, did we do it really well? Did we lack it? Could we get better in one of those areas, right? What are those things that we can control? And if it's an outcome thing, it's okay. Like, we're not going to harp on that and just kind of move forward. So definitely helps conversations, though.
Oh, for sure. Now, when you said you give them the journal, so like would there be their like individual journal, like they just need to share it, they need to like go start, stop, continue, like they might just do that for themselves?
Correct. Yep. And a lot of times, some kids don't want to talk, right? The thing I like about journaling is we talk about, becoming Superman when you get into baseball, when you get there, right? You need to be able to be Clark Kent and change into Superman. Forget everything that happened before. Forget the argument that happened with your girlfriend. Forget the test you failed. Forget all the stuff that just happened or stuff that's going to happen in the future. Become Clark Kent. Now you're Superman, right? You put on the cleats. You're Superman for the next 2-3 hours, whatever it is, right? You're a baseball player. And then what journaling allows us to do is it allows us to go from Superman back into Clark Kent, right? Because what I tell them is if we have a game during the summer, regardless of how it went, right? Your girlfriend really doesn't care. Like, she doesn't care. You went 4 for 4 with 4 bombs. She doesn't care, right? You went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. She probably doesn't care, right? Like, so when you leave the field, journaling at least allows them to air out all their grievances, right? And just write things down, and then we'll pick it up tomorrow and we'll get better at it. But once you leave the baseball field, leave it, right? You're no longer baseball player, right? You are now boyfriend. You are now son. You are now brother. Whatever it happens to be, like, go be that, and just kind of leave everything. So at least this gives them a chance to write it down, kind of clear their mind a little bit, and then hopefully, come back tomorrow with a renewed sense.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you say, because we talk about becoming Superman when we get on the field, but I think that was a really good statement of we have to turn back into Clark Kent when we're done. I think that is definitely a missed piece. It's almost like everybody does arm care before, but they don't do arm care when we're done. We don't think about the recovery, and I think that's a pretty big piece. It's something that's not even talked about. It's turning into Superman. Let's also leave it, and so we can get some rest. And like you said, we have because we're going to be that person much longer than we are going to be the baseball player. So
for sure, 100%.
That's really cool how you said that, and I think that was really valuable in the second half of that. That's great. So you dive into like a little bit of the ape. Like, so what are some telltale signs? You want them to either highlight certain things or you need to research certain things about your ape, how do you, when you want to break those things out at the end of the game, when you talk about those, like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, for sure. So, we talk about, what are things within our control, right? And I go to ape. It makes it easy for them to remember. I'm coaching my son's 11U team. They know what ape means, right? We'll even have like a stuffed monkey in the dugout, right? It's just a reminder. So we have the A. We have our appearance, and I'm not talking about like being clean cut and shaven, right? But we're talking about body language. Okay, so what does our body language look like when things are going well, when things aren't going well? And then we have our attitude. You just period. That makes sense. P, we have our perspective, the way that we're going to look at a certain situation. That could be like, we got to play the number one ranked team in the state, or hey, we get to play the number one ranked team in the state, right? The way we're going to look at something. And then the process. So we can dive into the process later, but, very rarely are we going to take a look at a batting average, right? So big proponent of quality at bats, which I know is more and more common now. Quality inning and hard hit ball percentage. Are we doing the little things the right way to get us closer to having success? And then E, our energy and effort. So if those are the things that we can control, and there's others, that you could add in there, but if those are the things that we're going to control, I'm not going to give any time to things outside our control, right? I'm not going to talk about the umpires. We're not going to talk about, the maybe it was a turf field and it was really good, but it was fast, or a bad grass field that we played on, or, the other team or fans. Like we're not going to give that any time and energy within there. But to get kids to really understand that, I'll go back to signal lights, right? So you're driving a car and it's a green light. What do? You go, right? Well, in a baseball game, that green light situation was things are going smooth. Everything's going really well. We know that rarely happens in baseball, right? There's a lot of adversity. So that would be like a yellow light. And when we're driving and we see a yellow light, we have two options. We can pump the brakes and we can slow down, or we can speed up to get through that thing. And the same thing happens in baseball, right? Are we just going to speed up and are we going to go through that yellow light when we're facing some adversity and let that snowball effect start? Or are we going to pump the brakes, establish our routine to get ourselves back in the moment? Obviously, the red light, you should stop. If you don't, we're going to crash. We're going to get a ticket, right? So we're trying to avoid guys getting to that red light. That's when we got guys swearing, throwing helmets, throwing bats, which I'll just kind of laugh to myself because you see other teams do it. And then I'm usually like, hey, good. We've got them where we want them at that point. But that transition from green light to yellow light, for me, that's where the money is at. To really get kids to be aware of when they switch and what changes in the realm of our body language, our focus, and our self-talk, right? So we'll talk about like, hey, what does your body language look like, right? Our appearance, if you will, in the ape. What does our body language look like in a green light situation? And every guy is different, right? Maybe it's like their chin is up when they have big body language. Maybe it's when their chest is out. Whatever it happens to be with their body language. Maybe they're giving more high fives. They're more talkative, something like that. Well, how does that change when adversity hits, right? And I can't remember which MLB player it was, but we have a former major league player in Indianola. His name's Kasey, played in the bigs for like 11 or 12 or 13 years. So I've had conversations with him about this and about the mental game. And he told me a story, and I can't remember what the player it was, but they recognized that as soon as he hit first, if he got out, the first thing that would happen was his chin would drop and he would walk back to the dugout. And so that was like his negative body language, right? And then you'd kind of like have slump shoulders, like loose or limp. So they actually like filmed him and they made it aware that that's what you're doing. So that from then on, he would hit first and his chin would immediately go up and his chest would go out, right? Like, hey, that's all right. We're going to fail. So getting them to kind of realize like, when does that switch? And then can we get back into a routine. So we'll take a look at body language. We'll take a look at our focus. If we're focused in a green light, we're focused on this pitch. But the reality of it is a lot of guys are focused on the future, right? Hey, we've got 3 outs till we beat said team, or whatever the case is, right? Or, hey, I've got an at-bat next inning, and they're getting ready for the at-bat, but they're supposed to be playing the field. Or we're focused on the past, which is usually where we're at. We're focused on that at-bat we struck out on, or lined out to the shortstop, or anything in the past rather than be in the present. So can we catch ourselves not being in the present moment with our focus? And then our self-talk. Are we in a green light situation? We are having positive self-talk to ourselves. And then when does that change, right? When does that change to anything negative towards ourselves? I suck, or something along those lines. So can we catch ourselves, switching from that green light to that yellow light, and then implement that routine to get us back in the moment?
And can you explain, like, I don't know why it's doing that. Things like, again, how those practice routines look like to maybe enhance those things and to continue to work on them?
Yeah, just different routines within practice.
Yeah, so like within practice, like, so you think about, self-talk, like, is that stuff you're going over like, I guess in your mental minute is when you're breaking in these things down? Because I know you just talk about awareness, strategy action, which is what you're basically just doing. Are we aware of when, what our self-talk is like during these things? So, and again, just like what strategies, like, again, the practice of it, like you said, like Dehmer was so great. Like, how do we put these things in practice, say, well, here's how we get better at the mental game.
For sure. So yeah, a lot of that is having those conversations ahead of time. So having them write down, what is their, what would be positive self-talk things that they would say to themselves, right? So that is part of their routine. So if we're in the box, we're gonna take a deep breath on a focal point, right? And then we're gonna get in the box, and the last thing we're gonna do is we're going to have that positive pitch or swing thought, right? So we make guys write those down. Now we use like a Google form, so we know what they should be saying to themselves, right? So maybe as a pitcher, it's like pound the zone, or there's a really good story on John Lester when he was working with Bob Tewksbury with the Cubs, and he would repeat the pitch to himself, right? So you'd see it from the catcher, he'd be on the rubber, and then be like fastball in the 1 zone. So he's saying that to himself, like, right, fastball in the 1 zone, and then he'd be able to execute, because that's like the only thing he is thinking of. But then we would have that positive pitch or swing thought, and then we'd also have some like release language, right? So a guy he's in the box and he just misses a fastball and hits it back to the backstop. You can say something like, hey, get big, right? There's your trigger, your verbal trigger to take a deep breath, right? Breathe in greatness. So take a deep breath and let's get locked back into that present moment. Or, hey, so what next pitch? Same thing, kind of that verbal trigger, being able to get in there. One I like to use is ACE. Acting changes everything, right? And whatever that verbal trigger is, and it just kind of becomes a common language within the program. Another one is Good, Jocko Willenick's movie or YouTube video. Good, right? So we have like a number of these like common languages within the program that all mean the same thing, right? Forget what just happened, get locked back into the present moment, right? We're focused on this pitch. So, kind of creating some of that common language for the kids to use is really beneficial, because they'll hear it from me in the third base box, or from dugout, from teammates, in the dugout, and that part's really beneficial to kind of create some of those. And once again, those are taught, right? And whatever, I just said like 4 or 5, different ones. Maybe you have others within your program, but kind of finding something to help trigger those guys to understand, like, okay, that's passed and we're kind of moving on.
And I'm thinking of what we mentioned earlier about like just this is your second season in Indianola, and how it really just came from, being under 500 and now, 30-11 last year. And you said it was really just a matter of changing the culture. So, I'm sure these were things that were not talked about and how you came across and wanted to talk about these things. So can you dive into a little bit about, how are you able to start having these conversations with all these kids? You mentioned the Google form, like just some practical things of how you went from guys that never did it now until now becoming, again, like you said, part of the language of the program.
For sure. So Iowa, once again, our season is in the summer for high school baseball. So we can actually start with in January. So we actually get 4 months to work with pitchers and catchers, which I know there's gonna be some coaches from other states that are like, you gotta be kidding me. Like you get that much time. But we do, right? And during that time is when I started having some of these conversations with guys. And starting off really small. And the first things we talked about were our signal lights, okay? And that whole process that we went through earlier, kind of developing some of that awareness. And then we started implementing some routines within our pitcher-catcher stuff. So when do you take a deep breath, right? When we're getting on the mound. And we would just start practicing with like shadow bullpens as well, right? Because we're not throwing live bullpens in January when our first game isn't until, mid-May. So then we can go through some shadow bullpens just to get them used to what does that routine look like and really get them to kind of try and figure out the routine on their own, right? We're giving them a bunch of different options. We'll show them videos of pro guys doing it. But what really gets you comfortable, right? So just getting them to kind of mess with some of those routines at that point. But then I go through this idea of leadership drives culture, culture drives behavior, and behavior gets results. And if you do that really well, it'll come back the other way. That once you get those results, right, it's then going to drive the behavior will drive the culture, and the culture will drive the leadership. So, as I was coming into a new program, I wanted to change, and not even change. I don't want to say like it was a negative culture, because it wasn't, but I wanted the kids to understand that this is not a dictatorship, right? And I don't want it to be a dictatorship. Am I going to do things that are different? Absolutely. But I also want to go from coach-fed leadership to player-led leadership, right? But it's going to take a little bit of a process for us to get there. I am a different coach than what they had. I am going to run things a little bit different. I do have just different expectations coming in. So at the first part, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's different. But that leadership is going to drive the culture. So that came from me, right? And the culture that I wanted to establish was based off of 4 key principles. And I call them PEAT. So the process, okay? And within the process, I define this as what you consistently do on a daily basis to give you the best chance for success. So, those guys that came in for off-season stuff for 4 months, we actually had a senior who last one that didn't get much time as a junior. And he came out and lefty absolutely threw his tail off. He ended up, we were 1 game away from state last year. He ended up pitching that game against the team that got state runner-ups. And they had won like 3 out of the last 5 state championships. We got beat 4-0. He pitched his absolute tail off. They didn't have a closer game in the postseason until they played in the state championship. And at one point, it was about halfway through the year, he came up to me and he's like, I now see why we did all that stuff in January and February, right? Mm-hmm. Like he started to understand that, okay, the process you have in place, it works, right? Like my arm feels better than it ever has, right? So kind of getting them to understand what you do on that daily basis, it'll definitely help. The first E is enthusiasm. And enthusiasm is that energy, effort, and attitude towards that process, right? And kind of a slogan. It seems like every year a phrase or a slogan sticks. And last year it was just bring relentless effort and energy. We're going to focus on just those. And if we can bring those night in, night out, when things are going well, when things aren't, we can be pretty successful just bringing that every single day. And kids did an absolutely amazing job of just buying into that. The T is trust. So trust yourselves, the work that you've put in. Trust us as coaches, your teammates. Trust your preparation, right? Because there is confidence knowing that you have put in the preparation. And once again, that kind of goes back to that process, but the kids started to really understand, like, we're ready. We're ready to play ball. And we were definitely playing our best at the end of the season. And then excellence. So working to be the best you can be on and off the field. And we'll strive quite a bit for that, right? Regardless, if you're out in the community and you're wearing an Indianola hat, you're representing everyone here, not just yourself. So trying to teach them, Coach, you mentioned earlier that we're going to be, a person a lot more in our life than we are an athlete, right? So getting them to understand that everything that we talk about, within the mental game, everything we talk about with baseball, yes, it is in a baseball sense in the present moment, but it goes way beyond the field, right? And really trying to develop these guys, wholeheartedly. So, developing that culture, leadership drives that culture. You have those core principles. That culture is going to drive our behavior. So something we talk about with our players comes from Urban Meyer's book. I think it's called Above the Line. And so we'll just talk about, there is no, which is kind of funny with what he just did in Jacksonville, right? But it's a good principle. And it's a good exercise. Because above the line, below the line, there's no gray area, right? So we'll take a look at ourselves as a person, a student, and a player. And what is above the line as a person, right? What is above the line as a student, as a player, and then what is below the line? And there is no middle ground. So once again, just kind of get them to understand some of those things. So if a kid if they said as a player above the line is, showing up 5 minutes early. Okay. So that means below the line is showing up 4 minutes and 59 minutes or 59 seconds early. So if they do show up, it's like, that's a simple question to ask them, right? Was that above or below the line? It's below. All right. We've got whatever we have, we got a little running or whatever it happens to be. So that helps drive those behaviors, right? And establish that. And then ultimately, that whole process is going to help us with our results. And, last year, once again, first year, I thought it was a pretty good year, right? 30-11. Now I'm hoping we can cycle it back through, right? We had some pretty good results last summer. Hopefully we can, continue with some of those. Have those results now bleed into behaviors and kind of take those behaviors to that next level, and just guys kind of understand the way that they need to conduct themselves, right? That's ultimately going to help the culture. And the best thing I had at Martensdale St. Mary's was that culture was now passed down from year to year to year to year. We didn't have to start over. And I'm really looking forward to this season to see how established is our culture? How established are those core principles? And, kind of bringing that relentless effort and energy and really seeing the process that worked last season, as the story I told with our lefty, how bought in our guys at that point. And then ultimately we can get all the way back to that leadership to be player led, right? And once again, after a decade at Martensdale St. Mary's where we had, really, really good success, we averaged over 30 wins a year and, made state tournament 9 out of 10 years. And had that sustained success, that's what was pretty cool was, it did definitely got from the player leg. If there were any issues with effort and energy, rarely did it need to come from a coach, right? Kids were kind of policing and taking care of things themselves and just knew that, hey, this is what we need to do if we want to be successful. And it's pretty cool when you get to that point, because then things start kind of running on their own.
I guess my next thing is coming into, because I love the above the line and below the line activity. Where are you finding in time? I guess just to have everybody's wrap their mind around, when are you having that time to talk about the above the line, below the line person, player, student talk? When have you taken the time to put that into your program?
So I'll kind of go like do a little, a lot, not a lot, a little, right? So spending that 5 to 10 minutes before every practice, before every game and batting practice, before every off-season time, honestly, just kind of like establishing those things every single day, rather than having like one big classroom session every Monday morning, right? And kids probably get sick of listening to me for that many months. And they'll get to the point where, where I've coached a kid for 4 years and I'm talking about ape still, and they're just like, probably like, you gotta be kidding. Like, we understand what it is. Well, good, because I'm still going to talk about it because it is like the fundamental basis. So I know that's not like a flashy answer of something, but truly just kind of laying out, what are the main things that you want to establish within your program? What are the main things that you want to get across to your players, and just talking about them every single day, and carving out time to do so, right? We kind of talked about practice planning. It's on the top of our practice plan every single day of what we're going to talk about. And it's there for a reason. It's not like, we just randomly came up with something.
So like, because I'm just thinking like, you first took over the program, you're talking about signal lights, so like that's a time. So, and then you're going to get into above the line, below the line. Like, is there like a progression? I know that you've kind of mentioned like I think a curriculum with people too, like with your mental performance. Is that like, do you have like a specific, kind of way that you've kind of started? Because I'm thinking, okay, I'm diving into signal lights. Am I going to stick with that? Or are you going to kind of, okay, here's a signal lights, and then we're going to dig into like, here's where our culture and like our player, person, a student. And are you weaving all those things in there? Or are you kind of like making sure we get like one topic before we move into the next?
Yeah. So if I were going in working with a team, first thing I would establish is that performance pathway, that leadership drives culture, culture drives behavior, behavior gets results. And, have them just sit down and just work through. I mean, we already talked about what that process looks like, but work through that, right? And being able to establish, a lot of the coaches I talk to or programs I talk to, when I ask them, like, do you have any core principles or core values, whatever word you want to use? The answer is no, right? Well, what is driving your program? So being able to establish, like, what are those? What are the things that we are going to be really good at? And then talk with them. Or even, I've talked with a couple of college coaches, and I was like, hey, do you have core values or core principles? And they'll be like, yeah. Let me pull them up on my computer. Okay, you don't know them, right? So getting at something like PEAT, right? Acronyms help. Maybe it's just like 3 words, but getting people to understand within your program, like, what really matters the most. So starting with those, kind of establishing that, then we'll get into kind of the weeds of what does that program look like, actually on the field. So then I would go signal lights. When do we change from green to yellow, within that body language focus and self-talk, and getting them to be aware there, and then start implementing some of those strategies. So the biggest strategies are our routines, right? So pre-pitch, pre-at-bat routines when you're in that green light, yellow light routines for both of them. Once again, becoming aware of what those look like, practicing those. A lot of dry bullpens can help with that. Just walk up to a throwdown plate and practice what that routine looks like, so they can create consistency and comfort for themselves before they actually get into the box. And then start having some of those conversations and even just you as a coach, right? Just kind of seeing who needs to do things a little bit better. And then obviously you can dive into all sorts of things within the mental game, but those would definitely be the two areas that I have started out in within my program and others that I work with.
And you're charging them like they said, like that first 5 minutes, and that's where we're just kind of a little bit always going to go over these things.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, and you said because you're not doing like a classroom session, and you might have a certain thing like that. This is just kind of your daily practice. Like, well, when we practice, this is what we do.
Yep. I know some programs will have a classroom session. Sometimes that works better for colleges to have like a sit down, because pitchers are working at one time, hitters are working at another time, and just gym space, at least with the colleges that I've had a chance to work with. But a lot of times, high school, most high schools, not everybody, a lot of times they're practicing together, right? They at least start at the same time, or there's a point where they come together if they had some early work. So you usually get a chance to have everybody together at that same time. We actually lift every morning, in season as well. So 9 o'clock we'll lift. That's a chance that I do have everybody together. So that could be something we talk about at the time that we'll do some mental imagery or meditation as well. I know Coach Schietinger's done a nice job of, making that a little more mainstream as well. It's not like this taboo thing,
right?
Going through, but that, you talk about like things that you can get to, within some of those routines, having kids be able to taking them through a meditation, just deep breathing exercise, and then have some of that mental imagery. So, the idea behind that is hopefully that they are able to see themselves perform the way they want to before it actually happens, right? So if you do some of that on a game day in the morning, hopefully that they've seen themselves be successful, 3, 4, or 5 times in their mind before they even get to the ballpark for the game that night. So I don't see any negative aspects to seeing yourself perform well.
Not for sure. Visually, and I think honestly, people do it more than they think. I remember the realization me diving into it was like, I was like, oh man, I know I did this as a player, shortstop or playing the defense. You saw yourself making a diving play here. You started making yourself here, and I think people just naturally do it. They don't realize, but then you realize like you could practice those things. Especially now with iMovie and how you can make little highlight films. Like you could see yourself making great plays a lot all the time, and that could definitely be part of that pregame routine and things like that. So it couldn't be part of like a red light routine, honestly. If you're a coach, it's okay with having phones in the dugout and watching them if you can manage that the right way. But cool.
That's a really good point that you made, that as a player you did some of these things, and I think that's really important for coaches to know, because I was the same way, right? I just when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, I kind of did. I kind of stepped out and took a breath when things were speeding up on me. But what this allows you to do is at least have a process to work through it with your players, right? And allow them to be aware long before I ever was, right? Yeah. So, I think when you first start talking about it with players, they're going to be like, hey, I do some of this. That is awesome. Let's just be more consistent with it, right? And it's okay to call time, take a step out to gather yourself, and take a deep breath and make sure that you are in control of yourself before said pitch. Like some of those things are okay, but they will have some of an understanding of things as well. So that's a great point.
Yeah, for sure. So, Coach, we dove into a lot of those things. Just, I guess, foundational, like mental game stuff too. And I know part of the mental game too is also having a process. And you kind of talked about quality bats. Just looking at the things, especially taking a program over right away, and that's the challenges of having a staff and things like that. Like, what kind of process stuff do you do, like either in game that you're looking for? Like like you said, you mentioned quality at bats. Are there other processes? Like you said, you don't waste your time on things that you can't control. So what processes are you kind of focused on, and what you felt was like most important for your team when you took it over?
Yep. So, I mean, honestly, this is probably gonna be pretty basic as far as the things that we chart. And so, yes, quality at bats. Another one that we chart are hard hit balls. So, we in game, I just use this idea of 3 to 8, and there's different charts out there, but a 1 or a 2 is going to be a ground ball that hits in front of the pitcher's mound. A 9 is a routine fly ball to the outfield, and a 10 is a routine fly ball to the infield. And we're trying to stay anywhere between 3, which would be like a ground ball past the pitcher's mound, and an 8, which is a line drive off the wall. And we establish this with kids, in the off season with hitting, during BP, we'll make them call out what number it was. Honestly, the numbers are kind of irrelevant. If they're like, don't get caught up on if it was a 3 or a 4 or a 5 or a 6 or a 7 or an 8. But what it does allow us to do is, our 3-hole hitter, he was at his best when he was hitting sevens and 8s, right? So like, let's see how hard we can hit, hard line drives into gaps and off the wall. Other guys, they're at their best when they are a 3 or a 4. When they're trying to hit a hard ground ball. If we had a lefty who got second in the state in the 100-meter dash, right? He's going to Iowa to play football. Like, we had a lefty, and he was really, really tough to get out when he hit a 3 or a 4 in the 5-6 hole. Like, it was pretty hard to get him out. But like, getting them to understand like what works best for them, and then get really good at that, right? So we don't get into like, that is our like generic approach to like launch angle, right? Like, we're not going to like get caught up in like 15 to 20 degrees and etc. But what works best for you, and then let's get really good at that. So we do chart like hard hit balls, and we use that 3 to 8. And then on the pitching end, we're looking at first pitch strikes, overall strikes, and then quality innings. So we still go 13 pitches or less per inning, or 1, 2, 3 inning. I know some college coaches I've talked to, that number is 16. 16 pitchers or less is what they've kind of found in college. I could probably change mine for high school as well. Maybe closer to 15 pitches an inning. That's still a pretty good inning. Actually, a really good inning.
Really good inning.
Yeah. So, I should probably change that now that we're talking. So we just kind of keep them within there. And then once again, those are just really good conversation pieces to have with kids. And as a coach, we'll chart, especially on the offensive side, we'll chart every hard hit ball, every quality at bat during practices leading up to that first game. And it doesn't fail every year as I'm trying to make out that lineup for game 1. Who do I put 8, 9, or like, it could be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I got 5 guys for 2 spots. Obviously there is the eye test, but this also gives me some information to add to it. And then also have that conversation. If I'm meeting with you, Trey, I'm going to go with somebody else. Your quality at bats are at 47% and hard hit balls are at, 42, and it just didn't meet where we were. So, as far as in game, those are, we do get, I guess I'm going to say pretty generic. I know others, chart a lot more. But those are the things that we focus on.
I mean, yeah, and that's fine. I think the money too, where we could help is, how do you increase a player's first pitch strike percentage? He does not doing very well. You're having that conversation with them, like, hey, this is why you're not getting your innings. How do you try to simulate a first pitch? How do you help them get better at that?
Yeah, so we'll kind of go. I'll have my pitching coach go with them into the bullpen, and like what pitch is it? Maybe it is like a get me over curveball. Like maybe that's the pitch that works really well. Maybe we're throwing too many off-speed pitches to start and we're getting behind. So kind of establishing like what is that go-to pitch, right? And like, so is it a fastball in the 1 zone? Is it a fastball in the 3 zone, in or out? Just kind of establishing like what is that pitch for them. So then my pitching coach will really be able to establish that with said pitcher and be able to help with pitch calling as well, right? So that's one that has been beneficial. Just like what are they comfortable with? Not that we get in a routine that's what they are going to throw every single time, but it does at least give us a little bit of information of what they're comfortable with and what they might go to in that situation. And then just kind of keep charting like, and maybe some guys are, their first pitch strikes aren't very good, but we do keep A3P as well. I know that was one that Justin Dehmer and I came up with. So after 3 pitches, is the ball in play or is it a 1-2 count, right? So if you're struggling with first pitch strikes, are you able to come back on pitches 2 or 3? So yeah, I mean, I think that definitely the one thing on that first pitch strike is having that conversation with a player and getting to know what works well for them.
That's great. Can you so like you said, you created the A3P with Justin. So just diving a little more of that chart, what you got to see with that chart. A lot of people are doing first 3 strikes, first 3 pitches, I should say. But yeah, A3P meaning after 3 pitches, right? And I guess the goal is to have the at bat over in 3 pitches or get into a 1-2 count.
Correct. Yep. So yeah, I mean, our biggest thing was like, how efficient can we be with our guys, right? And I don't know what it is everywhere else, but a pitcher can have 110 pitches in Iowa, right? And then you are done. And so how efficient can we be? If not that we have guys go 110 all the time, but being able to get ahead, stay ahead is definitely a key success. So it's something super basic to be able to take a look at. Same thing. Are we getting that first pitch strike? And if we're not, can we flush that away and get locked in for the next 2 pitches? Or, are we either ahead? Are they putting the ball in play? And just kind of keep that game moving as well. It helps defensively, so we're not just kind of sitting around, just trying to be efficient in on the zone. So it was something that we saw as a definite need within the program at that time, and it's definitely been beneficial, even years later.
Well, what kind of like success rate, like data do you have on it? Like what, like you have certain goals or certain?
Yeah, so we shoot for 2 out of 3, so 67%. Typically, like quality at bats, we're at 60%. A3P, we found that 2 out of 3, 67% is our number that we want there.
There's 67% of the at bats that you faced, right? The at batters that you faced were less than 3 pitches.
Yeah, correct.
You've gotten these things done. They either put in play or you got into a 1-2 count.
Yep. So, we've broken that down of, our first pitch strikes, we want that to be right at that number, 60%, 67%. We'll even look at like after the first 2 pitches, we want at least 1 strike in the first 2 pitches 90% of the time. And then, if we get back to that A3P, are we essentially staying ahead, 67% of the time? Because if we go back to that, quality inning being, I'm going to stick with 15. That's a good inning. Essentially, like after, can we keep an at bat to 5 pitches, right? And if we can do that every time, we're getting pretty deep into a game. But if we keep going full counts every single time, you're gonna get 4 or 5 innings out of a guy, maybe, which is okay. Maybe you're a big strikeout guy and that happens. But just trying to be more efficient, especially when the pitch count situation came in.
Absolutely. No, it's definitely important because like pitch count, it's it has changed the game in that way where like you're just trying to make sure guys are more efficient, like you said. So it is for me. It's always like, okay, how can I help that guy get better at that? Like it's great that we know. Yep, like this is great. Like we know that where you're at, and how do we help them develop those things? And I guess it goes back to what you were saying about what is a pitcher really good at, and then we just need to, kind of keep working on that, getting in the bullpen and keep focusing on those things so they can get better at them.
Right. Easier said than done, right?
Correct. Correct. For sure. Oh, A3P. So that's great. Yeah, I love A3P first win the first three, man. It's great. Great stuff, man. When you took over, I know you mentioned about the culture and things like that. We'll kind of start wrapping things up here. I just think from a bigger standpoint, like when you looked at the vision, you kind of came from a program that was 9 out of 10 state finalists. The 88 game win streak, a lot of success, so like when you're putting together the vision and the mission for your new program in this culture, what was your vision? How did you sell it? How are you getting guys to get on that and get on your bus?
Yeah, no, great question. So ultimately I kind of reverse engineer that, right? So our vision, ultimately, and this is, every single year is to prepare our guys for success in life, right? So that is ultimately the end of the road of what we want our kids to do and what I want them to get out of baseball and playing for me in the summer. And then I'll reverse engineer that back into the present moment. So kind of stepping back, right? That next step would be, I want you to graduate from Indianola. After that, okay, along the way, let's try to win a state championship. The next one down, I have go to Principal Park, which is the Iowa Cubs AAA team here in Iowa. That's where we play our state tournament. So Principal Park, like let's just get to Principal Park, and then after there would be win a sub-state, right, which would get us to that point. Host and win a district. So we were able to do that last year. Win our conference. And then go 1-0 today. How do we go 1-0 today? We push the rock the next 200 feet, right? So get ourselves just that little bit better every single day. And we cannot win a state championship if we don't take care of today. You can't graduate from Indianola if you don't take care of today. We can't. It's tough for us to, obviously, as a coach, I'm trying to prepare you for success beyond baseball, just in life. I can't do that if I don't get you better today, if I don't invest in you today. So kind of like, okay, this is the stair step, but ultimately it's coming back to, pushing the rock the next 200 feet day in, day out. And once again, year 2, I think kids do understand that. If we get swept in a double on Monday, we got a chance to put that in the past and either come out and play a game Tuesday or get better at practice. And that's all right. That's part of the process. Let's see what we can do. Or the other way, right? You win 2 big games, do the same thing. We got to start back at square one and continue to get better.
So it's just something
kids understand that, they truly do get that. But it's having those conversations.
Right. And so I guess a question for me is something you came out the gate right away saying we're going to win a state championship. Like that's the goal. The goal is to be here. Like what if a program like isn't winning where? And I guess you just have to have a feel of where your program is.
Yeah, for sure. I could be wrong in saying this. There obviously are going to be some programs that don't stand a chance, but like at the beginning of the season, isn't that everybody's goal? and if it's not, I don't know. I'll just kind of leave it at that. But I think that's everybody's goal, is to win a state championship. The importance of breaking it down is it's everybody's goal. Like, everybody has that same goal. So how are you going to get there? So yes, I mean, that is definitely the carrot out there. Is it more realistic for some teams than others? 100%. But it's not this like taboo thing that we never talk about, winning a state title. Like, no, it's out there, and that's definitely something that we're striving for, and something that we ultimately would want to get to. So we'll talk about it. Absolutely will. And, especially when I feel like we can, over the next couple of years, we can definitely get to that point at Indianola that I was at Martensdale. But, it was something that, kids were talking about already at Martensdale every single year. We get to off season. I mean, they're talking about winning a state title. That's awesome, guys. That's absolutely awesome. And I want you to have those high hopes, that the high vision. Let's not forget how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the importance of that stair step approach that I kind of broke down earlier. Of, I want you to be thinking about being successful and being the best that you can possibly be. Now let's put in the work to get there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but once again, everybody has the same goals. Let's just get really, really good at what we do.
And so I guess just wrapping things up, I guess let's go through this from like a staff standpoint, and like, you're having to put together a staff, and is this something that they need to be involved with right away? Getting on board with your mental game and how you approach things, your process. How do you get a coach on it invested into that?
No, that's a great question. I was really, really lucky because I had one paid assistant at Martensdale, and then I had a volunteer. And those two guys came with me to Indianola. So I was very fortunate because I was able to coach with them, previously. But at some point they had their first year with me, right? And I go back to that first conversation I had as a 20-year-old coaching with Justin Dehmer, of like, I was truly drinking from the fire hydrant, right? But that was the best thing that possibly could have happened to me, because it was new information. It sparked my interest. And then I started learning as he was implementing it within the program within that year one. But I've honestly kind of taken that same approach of, I'm going to give you a lot of information on the get-go, and then let's coach that first year and kind of see, how it all plays out and what it looks like. So luckily, my first year at Martensdale, I had two guys that had kind of gone through that process, if you will. And then another assistant, our pitching coach, that was his first year with me, right? And kind of treated it the same way of like, we talked about like what some of this stuff would look like in the processes, but he's now seen it throughout the full year, right? The players have now kind of lived it and gone through the full year. So, I'm super excited about year two. But if this is something that you believe in as a coach, if it's something that you are implementing as a coach, then it works. And getting the guys to be on board will come with kind of that last part of the results, right? It helps players get on board. It helps the coaches get on board. And even if let's say you end up 15-15, you're going to have some positive things along the way, right? You're going to have some positive results that you're going to see, and know that, hey, maybe we need to spend some more time on something, right? On routines, when things don't go our way or whatever. It just helps you plan for that next season, which is something that I just absolutely love about coaching, right? We can always get better, and which is obviously why I met you at ABCA here. We're just lifelong learners, just trying to continue to get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love that. Oh, so let's say if someone wants to continue to learn more from you, what might be the best way for them to reach out to you, follow you, see what you're doing?
Yeah, so I do have a website, just coachfitzpatrick.com. That would be like more of the mental game aspect of it. My wife might hate me, but somebody is more than willing to call me at any time. So I'll just give you my number. It's 515-339-5490. Love to talk anytime about just the mental game, about baseball, working with your program, whatever it happens to be. Absolutely love it.
You're on Twitter too, aren't you?
Yes, it is at Fitzpatrick_MP.
Great stuff by Coach Fitzpatrick. And again, if you're looking for a way to implement a mental game, do a little bit, a lot, just make it a part of what you do every day. This is great. It was a great episode for that. It's a great learning part of it where he's not trying to do too much, just trying to make it part of his everyday practice, not having the classroom sessions, just like, nope, this is what we talk about every day. There needs to be some part of this every day. From his ape talk to his signal lights and being able to create routines and have a language all based around those things, and that is where they're starting. Even from a culture standpoint, like what's your team look like, and the thing that they're trying to get, again, the common language and the common talks, the common vision that they're trying to incorporate is all just based off of this every day at practice, a little bit at practice, and of course finding what they need at that time. So, really good information. We got the chance to talk more like just specifically then about you talk about charts, what your processes, and then kind of building that vision. And really coming down to the end of the day, that stair-step approach. The first step is you can't get to the state championship without winning today, without winning the pitch. And just loving that reverse engineering that he did. Again, if you're not following him, follow him at Fitzpatrick_MP. His website is coachfitzpatrick.com. Both are great ways to reach out to him and check out what he's doing. And again, Coach, can't thank you enough for what you did. Can't thank those Netty Pros guys for sponsoring us and helping get the message out as best we can. So if I can keep doing anything for you, just let me know. It was great seeing guys, and appreciate all the feedback we got from the ABCA. It was awesome. And I continue to let us know how we can get better. And until next week, keep getting better.